So as you hopefully know by now, evolution is the process by which populations of organisms change over time and is driven by several key mechanisms that change and shape genetic diversity and adaptation. And there are actually four main mechanisms that you're expected to memorize. These are mutation, gene flow, gene drift, and natural selection, which each play a crucial role in the dynamics of species. Sorry. Okay, so we'll start with mutation. Mutation is where genetic variation originates. It happens when there are changes in the DNA sequence of an organism. Mutations can arise spontaneously during DNA replication or due to external factors like radiation or chemicals. Most mutations are neutral or harmful, but occasionally they provide beneficial adaptation that improves the organism's fitness in its environment. For instance, a mutation that grants resistance to disease or allows an organism to exploit a new food source can boost its chances of survival and reproduction. On the other hand, gene flow refers to the movement of genes between populations of the same species. This occurs when individuals migrate or interbreed with members of another population, transferring the genetic material. Gene flow reduces genetic differences between populations and introduces new genetic variations. It helps maintain genetic diversity between populations and promotes similarity within populations and promotes similarities between populations. On the other hand, gene drift, which is very easy to get confused with, but there are different ideas, describes the change in allele frequencies due to random events rather than adaptive pressures. So unlike natural selection, genetic drift is a random process that can reduce genetic diversity, particularly in small populations. Two main forms are the bottleneck effect, where a population dramatically shrinks due to events like natural disasters, and the founder effect, where a small population starts a new population with limited genetic variation. A key difference, so essentially gene drift is random. Essentially say that there's an ant population, someone came over and stepped on them. They were all nested in the same area and it was independent, they did not intentionally try to step on them. The ones that are stepped on are random, but by chance you could have a selection of alleles on the left side and a selection of alleles on the right that are different. The alleles that are on the left have survived and are therefore more likely to be in higher quantities. But this wasn't due to natural selection, it was just by chance. And that brings me to natural selection. This is probably the one you might be the most familiar with. Natural selection is the mechanism that drives adaptation through differential survival and reproduction of individuals with advantageous traits. It operates in various modes, like stabilizing selection, which favors intermediate phenotypes, directional selection, which shifts towards one extreme, and disruptive selection, which supports both extremes over intermediates depending on environmental pressures. And you will investigate these a lot later in the year as well. But the main takeaway to have about natural selection is that essentially it is intentional selection against a certain trait. Say you have a mice population and the sand is ashy grey. You have a grey mouse and a black mouse. The grey mouse is more likely to survive because prey are more likely to notice the black mouse. In this example here, the frog, it's not the best example, but you can see that the frog clearly notices the ones that have spotted patterns on them more obviously than the regular plain red ones. So it naturally eats those ones, and that results in more plain red individuals in the population. These mechanisms, mutation, gene flow, genetic drift, and natural selection, all interact to shape how organisms evolve over generations. They explain the incredible diversity on Earth and how species adapt to their environments through continual evolutionary processes. They can affect anywhere from a microscopic to a macroscopic level in terms of evolution, and that's what makes them so interesting.